Okay, before we get started into today's session, I would like to take a minute for you guys to, on a scrap sheet of paper, or they're in your table, in your boxes, there are sticky notes or note cards. And I would like for you guys to write down what STEM means to you. Maybe not, I'm not asking for what STEM stands for, but what it means to you. And that can be a picture to illustrate what that looks like, or just your personal definition of that. And we're going to come back to that by the end of the session. So if you'll just take a minute to write down that, I would appreciate it. Okay, my session today is the STEM leadership and the STEM CS and Endeavor resources session. And I hope from today I was looking at your responses from your sign in, and they're all realms of education in here. So I hope today that I can tell you guys something that you can take back to either share or use yourself. Our agenda for today, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about myself, how I have started to grow STEM in my school, a STEM lesson that I have completed with another science teacher. We're going to dive into some resources that I found very useful for myself and some of the other teachers in my school. We're going to wrap up with some questions and takeaways, and then you guys will have an evaluation to complete. My name is Kristen Anderson, and I am from Cumberland County High School. I received my bachelor's of science degree in math from Kentucky Wesleyan College, and then I got my master's and rank 1 from the University of the Cumberland. So I saw there were a couple in here from there. I am from a small town of Barksville, Kentucky, and if you don't know where that is, it's really close to Del Hollow Lake. That's usually how I pinpoint where that is, because it's super small. I've been married to my husband Dustin for 6 years, and we have one daughter, Breaking Kate, who is 2, and a ball of energy, so it's pretty exciting. Then we have 2 lads, Cooper and Raider. This is my 9th year in education. I first started, I went to Cumberland County High School, and there was a job opportunity when I graduated back in 2012 from KWC. So I taught 8th grade math for 5 years, and then I moved to the high school, and I've been there for this is my 4th year now. I just finished my 5th year of coaching the varsity girls basketball team, and if that wasn't enough, I started coaching golf back in July. My basketball girls were just sitting around not doing anything because we didn't play summer ball, so I was like, hey, let's all go play golf, and it turned into me coaching, and actually was pretty fun. When I was doing my presentation and back, it was just kind of coincidental, I guess. I found this quote that really stuck out to me when I started these classes. And you guys can read the quote. I'm not going to read it to you, but I love this quote because everything we do makes a difference. Whether it's me as a teacher, me as a coach, you in whatever position you are in, you're going to make some type of difference, whether it's positive or negative. And when I was making my presentation and understanding more as I was going through my Endeavor classes, how important STEM is, this was really motivating to me because I want to make a difference. And I do think that STEM makes a very positive difference in the lives of the kids that I have every day. I am the only teacher in my building at Cumberland County that is part of the Endeavor program. When we actually started this back in 2019, the other math teacher at my school started this with me, and we went through our first class together. Once summer came, her husband was the band director, and they got a really good job opportunity somewhere else. So they moved, which left me all alone to complete this program. And I was very hesitant at first and not very motivated because I was like, hey, I don't want to go through all of this by myself. But even though I I was struggling through some of my classes because most of the other people that you'll see today, they have been partnered in going through the Endeavor classes. A lot of the activities we could do were activities that if you partnered up, it made it a ton easier. So I was kind of left stranded, and thanks to the people at GREC, Dale especially, helping me through it. I'm motivated, and here I am finishing up my final project and trying to grow STEM in my own school. So you guys know that STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math, and it's so important because STEM pervades every part of our lives. We see science everywhere we go. Technology, especially during this pandemic, you guys have seen how it is just kind of taken over every aspect of our lives. The engineering part, you think of roads and bridges and all of that stuff, but it actually faces the challenges of changes in our environment. And then mathematics, like I tell my kids, is in every single thing you do. Whether you realize it or not, you're going to see mathematics everywhere. And I ran across this when I was doing a little research from the National Science Foundation. It said, in the 21st century, scientific and technological innovations have become increasingly important as we face the benefits and challenges of both globalization and a knowledge-based economy. To succeed in this new information-based and highly technological society, students need to develop their capabilities in STEM to levels much beyond what was considered acceptable in the past. And in some of the other research I saw, STEM jobs are increasing at a higher rate than just regular jobs. So we see that STEM, how important that is, and seeing those things motivated me to try to bring that back to my school even more. So why STEM? The STEM coursework challenges students to think critically and focus on logical thought processes and problem-solving skills. The rigorous instruction prepares our students to succeed in any field, whether they're choosing to go into a STEM field or not. STEM allows students to be more equipped with using and developing technology. And like I said, especially during this pandemic, that has only reinforced the importance that we have with technology. In STEM education, students are taught skills that they can use in the real world, and being able to understand real world concepts and apply that to various aspects of their lives allows students to be more successful when they enter the workforce. All of those skills come together to create opportunities for students to be both prepared and successful in life beyond high school. So the thought process about me trying to grow STEM at my school started with, okay, how can I do this just a little at a time? Teachers are overwhelmed, even more so this year with teaching virtually and everything going on. So the question I asked myself was, how can I grow STEM just a little bit at a time? I am from a really small school, Cumberland County. The high school only has, well, we don't even have 300 kids in our entire high school. There's less than 1,000 in our entire district. So the math department has 2 teachers that teach all of the courses that you see up there. The science department has 2 teachers that teach all the courses that you see up there for high school. So while that's sometimes overwhelming as 2 teachers having to teach all of those courses, at the same time, that was where I saw the opportunity that I could share with the science and other teachers in the math department that we would be able to incorporate some STEM lessons or activities or just even some videos into any of these classes, and it didn't involve a ton of extra work, and it didn't involve a ton of people. So that would be 4 total people covering all of those classes, and just being able to add a video here and there or a lesson here and there was really how I found my opportunity to grow STEM. So some of those opportunities that I found that worked really well, and I want to share with you. The first one is common planning. Because we are a small school and we only have one other person, and that's our math department, we are able to share common planning. The other math teacher is actually a first-year math teacher. So That's really good in a lot of ways, because she has been very, very open to me sharing ideas with her, especially with STEM. And if I'm working with her, and as I am working with her through all of my courses and talking through STEM lessons and giving her ideas, she's been incorporating those into her lessons. She doesn't have, she's not a veteran teacher who has a bunch of lessons already planned and is not very open to that. She's the first year teacher who is just hungry for ideas. And so having that common planning time to be able to talk to her and go over things and let her see some of the work that I'm doing has been really good. The second thing is guided planning, which is a little more, a bigger spectrum of teachers from than just common planning. That includes, in my guided planning team, we have an English teacher, a CTE teacher, and then of course our administration. I think there's one other one. But guided planning meetings, we do those once a week, have allowed me to share different resources, again, with the teachers, maybe not just a math teacher, but in different content areas, to allow them opportunities to include STEM in the lessons that they teach. With peer observations, there's a couple of ways that I've used peer observations to grow STEM at my school. I have had the opportunity to observe a couple of other teachers that they wanted me to watch a lesson and say, okay, when I teach this lesson next time, how am I going to be able to do it differently by including something STEM related? Or is there a way that we can throw in some math standards or something mathematical into what I'm doing to make it a little more rigorous and a little more engaging for my students? At the same time, I've had teachers come and observe me to get ideas of a lesson that I'm doing and how I include the other standards into some of what I do, which also has led into collaboration and co-teaching. I've collaborated with one of the science teachers to create a lesson, and I will show you guys. I'm going to talk through that lesson here in just a little bit. But that collaboration with the science teacher actually led us into co-teaching the lesson I'm going to share with you. And all of that stemmed from a peer observation. And the last one of PLCs, we have had opportunities for different teachers to share resources. And again, I've been able to have that opportunity to share the resources that I've learned through these Endeavor courses to all of my colleagues, because that includes everyone in my school. And that has been really good for giving them ideas to see things they may want to use. Do you guys have any questions or comments or anything you would like to add so far? I'll keep trucking if not. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is the STEM lesson the most recent STEM lesson that I've completed with one of the science teachers. Our team in making the STEM lesson started with Ms. Tabitha Moon. She is our assistant principal and a former math teacher. She actually has taught math, high school math, longer than I have. So she is really familiar with the standards, and she was also an instructional person at one time. So she has been a really big help in being able to help us connect the science and math standards and look at other ways to incorporate STEM into different parts of what we're doing. Ms. Nina Carter is a second-year science teacher. She is the one that I collaborated with during the planning stage. And then during the lesson that I did, we shared, because our kids during this pandemic stay in pods all day. I had them at one point, she had them at one point, so we were able to use the same kids to conduct an experiment and do the math part and tie everything in together. And then I led the planning stage, created a data talk, and had students create graphs based on some research data. So to tell you a little bit about the process of how that worked, we first started, and thank goodness for technology, by sharing our pacing guides and the standards that we had left for the rest of the year to teach. Through that, we looked at some mathematical practices and found some related science standards, which that took quite a bit of time. And then the next point of the brainstorming potential task, we used some of those resources that I'm going to show you here in a few minutes to find a task that would work. And it would have saved us a ton of time if we may have started with the potential task or idea of what we wanted to do. I actually typed in the standard that I was fixing to teach and stumbled upon this lesson. So that lesson had all of the mathematical practices, standards, science standards, everything on there for me already, which is one of the really great things about some of these resources I'm going to share with you. But once we figured out the task, and when I go over that in a minute, you'll see how easy it makes your life. We determined the success criteria, created the lessons, implemented the lessons, and then did a reflection. The group that I did this with, I was really nervous about doing it with because it's a group of kids that were in the advanced math class, not necessarily an advanced math class, but they've always been ahead of the game. And the struggle with that, the reason I was nervous was because those are students, and you may have had those students before too. If they aren't getting something very quickly, then they just don't want to try something new. They don't like being challenged. They don't like being wrong. And so that's why I was really nervous about it. But it actually turned out to be really good. They loved being able to do it. They loved being able to do math differently, is what one of them actually told me. But they loved being able to see new things and create new graphs and do things like that, because it wasn't something that they were used to. So the lesson that I did was actually a global temperature trends lesson, and it used real world data to graph global temperature trends and predict future temperatures. And I like this lesson because, for one, it was real world, and the students were able to research data that they chose based on years and things like that. And a lot of times students are like, well, when will I ever use this again? Well, functions aren't something that a lot of students are ever going to use again, exponential functions, things like that. So this is a good lesson to say, okay, here we go. This is how we can use that, or you can use that in the real world. So there were 3 things that I wanted my students to do during this lesson, and that was analyze, create, and predict. They participated in a data talk over global temperature change. They researched some real world data and to see the effects of functions that can have on those situations. They ended up creating a Google Sheet using Desmos. And if you are not familiar with Desmos, it is a great free graphing resource tool that you can actually create classes, and they have pre-made lessons in that as well. That is really good. I use it all the time. And then I created a simulation of global temperatures. Once we completed all of that, they predicted future temperatures based on data trends, and then predicted how certain functions change or affect the data trends that they had. So I want to take just a few minutes to show you the data source link that I used. And you guys will have the opportunity here in a few minutes to actually look at this, the JPL website. But as I was saying earlier, when we were looking at our standards and going through those, that took a lot of time. And if I would have searched on this website first, it would have had all of those standards there for me. And these websites are really great because it has, I noticed they're elementary, middle, secondary, all the whole strand of standards on here. So this specific lesson covered some 5th grade science, and then it had some middle school science and high school science. The Common Core math standards are also listed here, 5th, 8th, and again, high school. So it's really good. These resources are really good for laying out those, connecting those standards for you. So it's the connecting part was really a struggle for me. And so that's something that it would take away from you guys, of having to do that struggle, that, okay, if you can't find, I'm a math person and I don't know a lot about science. So I found my science standards, and then here I was that it connected this, or I found my math standards and it connected the science one for me. So that's one really great thing about these websites. The next thing It gives an overview of what you will do. It gives you all the materials you will need. It tells you how to manage, what the things you need to do to manage those things, what you need. It gives a background, and most of these lessons are laid out the same. It gives a background for the lesson that you're choosing to do. It talks about the procedures, and it breaks them down like very specifically, like explain to students that they're going to be doing this, and then it gives specific questions here in a little bit to ask. After you go through the procedures, it does have, I can get there, like with the Google Sheet that I created with my students, it gave, because my students, I didn't realize that they were in high school. We don't offer business classes because we're so small, but they had never created a Google Sheet. So that was almost a lesson in itself. And so it gave step-by-step instructions for them to be able to do that. Then it gives a discussion piece, and it specifically, what is the difference between weather and climate? And it gives like answers that you should expect or conversations that you can have with your students to be able to have good discussion and make sure they're learning. Then it talks about the assessment part of it. And one of my favorite parts of this resource is it has some extensions. So you always know you're going to have those students that get done a lot sooner, or that want to keep going with what you're learning. And these are some good extensions that it may be a video, different things that you can use with those students as well. So this is a website. You guys are going to have an opportunity here in just a few minutes to look over that if you choose to and get some ideas. Okay, so to start my lesson that I did, and what I'm going to talk about through some of these may give you guys some ideas of things you can incorporate. But we started with a data talk. And if you've never heard of a data talk, it was just a way to get my students to practice interpreting a graph from a variety of data without really knowing much about the data. And the way they do that is I show my students a couple of graphs, and they made some observations based on those graphs. And thanks to Dale, and I'm not just saying it because he's in here, I was able to use it was just a Google Doc, and the students they put their names here, made their observations of the graphs here, and then gave each other feedback in the third column. So it was it's a very organized way to get students to start talking about different things, especially those students who, you're going to have students that don't talk out loud, but it's also a good way to get your students that are not in person, if you have virtual students, to participate as well. So they completed the data talk, gave each other some feedback on that, which those types of things hit a lot of those mathematical practices that I was talking about earlier. Then after the data talk, students researched some temperature trends, and the website for doing that was in the lesson that I just showed you. There was a link, and they could go in and choose different types of temperature trends. They could put in a certain year that was meaningful to them, things like that, to see data based on those things. So once they researched their temperature trends, they created the Google Sheet. And within the Google Sheet, they made a graph from that. And you guys, that's the second picture. I know it's hard to see much on it, but that was the Google Sheet that they created. And like I said, that almost turned into a whole new lesson, just because students didn't realize all that you could do with the Google Sheet. From the Google Sheet, they made predictions and created graphs from Desmos. So this lesson talked about different types of functions, from linear to quadratic to exponential, and like finding line of best fits. So based on, I had them say, okay, if it was a linear trend, then predict a future temperature for a certain year, and they got to choose the year. Or what if the trend became exponential? What would the future temperature be? And they were able to do those predictions. And at the same time, we were learning about functions, discussing functions, seeing how those functions related, and make those predictions based on the data trends. which actually ended up having some really good conversation, because I usually struggle with getting my kids super fired up when we talk about exponential functions. The next part is when they went to their science class, they did a simulation project where they filled up 2 glasses of 2 beakers with water and ice. They covered one of those and they recorded temperatures after a certain amount of time of both glasses, just to see and to get a vision and a real world aspect of the effects that it being covered versus non-covered had on like global temperatures. We gave them an assessment. The assessment that I chose was I just had them to justify why the temperatures would be what they were based on linear, quadratic, exponential kinds of things. And if they were able to justify their answer and show me their predictions, then that was the assessment that I did. It wasn't just a paper, hey, graph this exponential function. So that worked out really well. And then they did a survey and reflection to talk about things they learned, some takeaways they had, and it actually turned out really well. So here are some pictures. You know, they say if you don't post it, it didn't happen. So my students are here working on, some of them are graphing, some of them are doing their research part. I included a couple of extra resources for them to look at if we had extra time. And then also some pictures of them doing their science project and then comparing answers to make sure everyone was on the same track. All right, now the fun part. The resources I'm going to share with you here in just a second are very few of the many, many resources that I have learned and gained throughout this program. I have included 4 resources here. The first one that you see up there is the one that I got the global temperature trends lesson from. If you click on that resource, well, you guys, you have the QR codes, but that resource will show you, it has a ton of activities, workshops, programs, all of those things. You can choose what type of activity you want, what subject area, what grade, and what topic. And then it'll go through and it has a ton of stuff. Like you can get yourself really into something if you just keep clicking and clicking and clicking. The second one includes, it's just the NASA website. It includes different lessons and activities for different things. It has some videos on this one. You can, again, educators, you can pick your grade level, K through 4, 5 through 8, 9 through 12. There are some higher education ones on here. I haven't looked at a ton of those, but you can click lesson plans. There's different videos. There's interactive multimedia. There's posters that you can print. It's a really good website. I've used it several times. My NASA data is where I got some of my data from the graphs and stuff that I use. On this website, you can explore Earth system science phenomena. So you can pick any of these and it'll give you different things. Again, lesson plans, mini lessons, tons and tons of resources on that one. And I actually haven't used the last one, but it has some free virtual simulations on it. And I've heard a lot of people talk about it. The science teacher that I collaborated with, she is the one that told me about it. So in case there were science people in here, I wanted to include that one. So what I would like for you guys to do is scan in one of those or a couple of those resources. I'd like to give you guys an opportunity to take a little time to look at some of these resources and maybe find something that you think would be useful for you or something that you could take back and share with someone else. Now I'm going to give you, I would like to give you guys like 5 minutes to pick a website and click on a lesson, see if it's something you think it might work, or explore some of those things, or a data website or something. And then I would also like for some of you guys to share your findings. So if you want to prepare for that as well. Would anyone like to share something that they found that they may, like they could use or take back to their teachers, or something they found pretty interesting, whether it's a video or an activity or a lesson or something? At least one person.
On the NASA one,
Uh-huh.
it's pretty cool. There's an astronaut reading a book. So it's just a story time that she's like in space. So she shows the book and then she starts floating around and the book starts floating around. It's pretty cool. I mean, just that is what students to hear a story, you know, and it's pretty neat that the astronaut reading it from.
Right. And I'm probably going to pay more attention to something like that than just me standing up in front of a room, you know, reading a book. So yeah, that's great. Yes, sir. Yeah. And the one I used, that was the big thing. Like they were just like all in, like with videos and everything. If you can do catchy videos and things like that, I mean, that gets students hooked right off the bat. Anyone else?
I probably the one where GPL coding of a simulation to get I've done something similar in a project. But take either Unity or something like that program, have them design the actual robot or whatever it is, and have them actually code it, pick it out.
Oh yeah. We just went through a coding class, and that was, I have a lot of respect for people who are able to do that because it stressed me out. But I mean, it's great. I loved it. And I mean, it had a ton of great stuff. All right, we're almost done. Do you guys have any other questions or takeaways? Or is there a website or a resource that you know that you would like to share with me or anyone else in the room that you have found or used quite a bit? Do you want to share that one you were telling me about?
Wiser Me.
Wiser Me.
WIZER.me. It allows you to, you have a lot of paper stuff, you can transform that and make quizzes out of it that way, or take your video content and then have them do certain breakouts and do post it online for your students to take a quiz off of that. So as you put your classroom, give them ideas on taking a quiz, and you can, you said you haven't graded it, it allows you to automatically grade it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I really like that one. It was the wizer.me, WIZER.me. That would be a great one to try out.
You know, as teachers, you know, more and more with technology, we're trying to get a little bit stressed, trying to make things as simple as possible, yet
Right,
expedient it.
right. I did mention Desmos earlier. That's a really great website to use for graphing. It has other things on there. It has lessons and things like that. That's a great website to be able to use. So I would like for you guys at the beginning of the session, I had you guys write down your personal definition of STEM. And I would like for you to read over that again and see if anything based on what I've said today or what you've seen on what you heard earlier, what you've seen maybe on some of these websites you were exploring through the resources, has your definition, or if you drew a picture, has that changed in any way? Is there anything you think you should add to it? Is there anything that would be different about it now that we've talked a little bit more about STEM? And if so, if you would like to share, I would be glad to hear from you. For me, it was before I started these courses, STEM was always like one of those things that, you know, do a little science during math, throw in a little technology and you're good. But it's become so much more, and seeing the importance of how students are and giving opportunities to students, especially in my area who may not have those opportunities otherwise, of showing them these types of things and job opportunities that they could have. Because we have, in my school, I have some really great students that if it wasn't for STEM courses or STEM lessons or things like that, they may not see or know that they're good at something, or coding or robotics like you talked about. And that's just one of those things that Like it includes so many things. It's in everything that we do. And that's why I think it's super important.
And Kristen, may I share something? Is that okay?
Can you what?
Can I share something?
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely.
okay?
Absolutely.
I was just thinking that with STEM, there's a perception that when I speak with people that they think it's just for the gifted. And that's far from the truth, in my opinion, anyway. That, STEM gives you access to the relevance and the connection. It's about, how math and science and other concepts of technology playing into the real world. So that was just a thought I wanted to share. And continuing sharing, if anybody else wants to share, well, I'm going to put this microphone in front of you so that way our Zoom folks can clearly hear. Because our voices, although they carry in this room, it's kind of difficult for them to carry to that location because she's got the hot mic up there on that computer.
I love that deal. One of my favorite stories I like to tell about a third, as a district administrator is about a student who had a reading disability that was by far the best in the class, and they were able to read it out of materials they had. And it made his day because he showcased what he did, and he got to be the winner, like I guess he felt like, I'm the smart kid today, but I love telling that story because when you do these types of activities, you create so much more engagement with kids, and you help them find their own inner talent. So that was a win that day for that kid, that he was the best in the bar. So we probably got pretty much.
All right, I think, they need to do an evaluation, right? And for you.
Yes, we do.
Okay,
So on the STEM test agenda, and also our virtual folks have the same access to this evaluation survey. We want to find Kristen Anderson's page.
or
And
you
we're in
can
room
scan the
2A.
QR code. The QR code will also get you there
Awesome.
from your paper, so.
So you have that convenience here, if you're doing the slideshow, but it is posted, it's titled evaluation link on the STEM test agenda. And Kristen, we very much appreciate your feedback on this session, and also for our in-person folks, we have some contact tracing questions that we just need to ask, identifying your table number. And before we leave today, I will ask you to take your table number stand and then flip it flat on your table, so me and my assistant can go around and clean up the world we live in.
And as you guys are filling out that evaluation form, I do want to thank you guys for coming. Having support and going through this has been a huge help, and it's really important, and it's really helped me to be able to grow STEM at my school and hopefully wherever you're at. And I would love for you guys to reach out if there's every time you have any questions, or you're looking for a resource, or if you come across a really great resource and or a lesson and it worked really well, I would love to hear about it because I'm always trying to grow myself. So I have my email up there if you would like to reach out sometime. But I do appreciate you guys coming and being a part of today.